Well, I thought I'd do a bit of a video about contemplating changing scooters. Well, maybe changing is not the right word. Maybe changing implies too much. But at least maybe getting another scooter. And maybe this one will get pensioned off. I don't know. We'll see. But I've sort of partially committed to, well, totally committed to buying an MX60. Next week. And that means that pretty soon I'll start at least blogging and vlogging about that. And I can't be entirely sure it's a good idea. I mean, buying the MX60. Because as tepid as some people think the wide wheel is, because it's not as fast as a 010X, it's actually a fucking fun little thing to ride around on, and it's got plenty of power to get me pretty much anywhere I want to go. So I don't know whether it's a good choice or not. And the reason is I think that this scoot is really the low-hanging fruit, because the 1000 watts is definitely enough to get me up any of the hills that I want to get. The speed is sufficient because in Queensland the speed is regulated to 25 kilometres an hour, and this does that no problem. Oh, a bunch of Corellas up there. Must be that time of the afternoon. So, you know, one of the major things that I bought my scoot for was, you know, to just get around town, go up and visit one of my mates, and of course I drag it down to Brisbane, and I think I'm going to get rained on looking at that over there. Especially since the wind's blowing it my way. And you know, getting to and from work from where I stay down in the city when I'm down there. But see, I've really come to appreciate just how stable this scooter is. Especially since I've seen friends of mine hurt themselves badly on their scooters because it, you know, flicked them. Now, let's just get back to the MX60. At the moment, it's like $3,000 Australian dollars, which is 1.5 times what I paid for this. Sorry, no, double what I paid for this. So, you know, is it double a scooter? And I guess, you know, depending upon how you value things, it could be. Depending how I value things, I'm not sure. But I'm buying it because I'm very interested in having a look at it. The things that I think are most attractive about it are the really good suspension. I'm a bit cagey about the pneumatic tyres because this is another place I normally come to, the pub. So you can see it hadn't really been that long to get to the pub. I come here for dinner some nights and just generally for a beer. But, you know, the extra suspension is helpful. But this one doesn't necessarily need it unless you try and take it off-road. But there are some dirt roads that I'd like to normally travel that I don't, and there's a little bit further out of town that maybe I'd go that I don't, and maybe that's because, you know, this scoot limits me. I don't know. What's coming behind me? Nothing. It's around there. So basically this scoot's pretty good and does everything I want. And I find it a benefit that it has not got pneumatic tyres, because I don't want flats. And it even handles, you know, a little bit of rough stuff, but the MX60's gonna have pneumatic tyres, so it will handle, you know, dirt better. The MX60's got a little bit more power, which may or may not be a benefit to me, because the more power will only really help climbing up steeper hills, and this thing already climbs up pretty steep hills anyway. So, you know, I don't really see what I'm getting. You might ask, why the hell am I buying it? I've been asking that myself a fair while. I'd like to also have a look at the build quality of it, because I think the build quality is going to be pretty damn special. And yeah, I thought I'd come this way around town because there's a really steep hill just up here, which is on the top of the hill there where the church is there. So I'll just head up that now. None of this shit looks steep on wide-angle lens cameras, but it's pretty steep, and you certainly wouldn't want to like ride a bicycle up here. And yet the Mercane just, you know, crawls all up here. Now I was about half charged when I left, so you know I haven't charged it since I've been doing some buggerising around. So it's had all of today's rooting around on this charge. We're still actually hauling up this hill pretty well. It's dropped it down to 46 volts, but that's understandable given the fact that it's a pretty bloody steep hill. The MX60 will probably go up this better because it's got double the power. Well, nearly double the power. This is 500 watts and there's supposedly 800 watts. But it's also got more weight, that's true. It's got a disc brake on the front and on the back. Oh, let's go over here. See, it's stuff like this that will be a little bit easier with the pneumatic tyre, I think. I like the scenery here. I don't know how much of a pain in the ass the pneumatic tyre is going to be. It's a tubeless, so that should help a lot. But anyway, the removable battery looks interesting. I'm a little bit worried about the battery because the battery's actually from this angle you can probably see how steep a climb that was, because you can see you can't see the bottom of the hill. Hard to really want more power than this. Anyway, the battery sits in the container and looks like it might bounce around a bit on some of the bouncier shit that I do here. And the dog's barking at me. I love that shit. Can't just go flat bicky over that because, you know, car might be coming. By the way, on any scoot, you should always be on the, put more of your weight towards the back when you're hitting bumps, especially going down a hill. Take off a lot of the load that the front's going to get. Whoop. Often the front suspension doesn't do very well with this sort of stuff. Anyway, yeah. The dual will be interesting. I don't know. Well, sorry, the MX60 will be interesting. I sort of feel like I'm just putting, you know, $3,000 down and I'll buggerise around with it for a while and find that I don't actually need to go out of town more than I do on this. Because for this sort of roads, it's, you know, perfectly fine. It's a nice little town to live in a lot of ways. You know the publican, know most of the people that run the shops. It's good. So anyway, if nothing else, you're just getting a bit of a quick tour. If you're ever in town, by the way, Foxy does a good job on working on cars if your car's buggered up. I don't know. It's true that there'll be like just in a minute we're coming across some harsher road, and you'll notice that you can hear some harshness coming through, which manifests itself as more vibration. Again, you know, no skin off my nose, and there's no real significant evidence of lasting wear on the scoot, you know, because I just did a bit of a inspection on the front suspension and the front axle this morning, and everything was fine. So, considering that everyone says this is a smooth road only scooter, it's hard for me to really say that that's true, because I don't only take it on smooth roads. Obviously, when it's really smooth tar like this, it's, you know, it's just like a hovercraft ride. But, you know, in reality, if the bumps get a bit harsh, you just stand on the balls of your feet a little bit. And, you know, I know if you're some obese, heaving big boy that you want everything to be comfortable, well, maybe that's actually not good for your health. Look out, savage dog. Oh, tear my leg off that one. This is one of my torture test hills for my single, and interestingly the 500 watt would actually get all the way up this. You can tell that it's a reasonably steep and consistent long hill. My street's just off there to the right. We'll come back down that again in a minute. But you know, sitting on 46 volts as it's just hauling up here. If I have the MX60, I haven't actually checked out what the power draw is going to be, but the MX60's got a 20 amp hour battery and at 60 volts. The 60 volts is going to make it go faster, that's for sure, because, you know, basically the volts translates to the maximum RPM of the engine, roughly. But the more power you need for any given voltage, the more amps you're going to suck. Now, okay, sure, 60 instead of 48. It's got a couple more volts up its sleeve in that multiplication of amps times volts to give power. But the faster you go, irrespective of hill or not, the more wind resistance knocks it out of you, and the wind is caused by you going forwards, right? And that requires more power. So it just, if I cruise on these speeds, I'll get 100 kilometers out of it, claimed on the MX60. But I don't want to fucking stand on this thing for 100 kilometers. For God's sake, at 20 kilometers an hour, how long do I want to stand on the damn thing? So, you know, for me, if I still sort of feel like if I want to do more than 20 kilometers, that I'll take my motorbike. And if I needed to do 20 kilometers around town, I'd probably still take my motorbike. But I don't know. So to me, I'm really questioning why I want the MX60. And I guess ultimately at the end of the day, what I really want the MX60 for is to really just see what it's like. It might be that I end up keeping this one and selling the MX60, which means I'll just lose some money. Sorry, I just love doing that shit. There's no apparent reason for it, it's just fucking fun. Oh, look at that, there's a nice little sunset over there. Well, a while before it hits the sun. Holy shit, has this grass grown since it fucking rained? That's amazing. Oh, this is basically the water supply for town. There's another one on the other side too, which you might have spotted, but anyway, this is the one closest to my side of town. So let's, oh, by the way, it's interesting. People say that there's a difficulty with the trigger. Well, I don't know. There is a bit of a dead spot there, but it is adjustable. And, well, okay, there is some adjustment in it, but frankly, I just punch it, let it sit on cruise control, and then go for it. Don't need to pay attention to it after that. The brief ride that I had of the MX60, the thing about it that was nicer was that on the much larger mode display over here, you could actually change from P1 through to P3 as the power levels, or as some people say, gears. Oh my god, gears. Anyway, in 1 and 2 it was pedestrian, you know, like, and I don't know if that's a good thing, because for hill climbing on off-road situations, you actually really want to be able to modulate your power, and I'll be interested to see how well the MX60 modulates its power, because when I tried the ZX, the 010X, it basically didn't have much in the way of power modulation at all. It just had like all or fucking nothing, same as this. And when I was in the lower powers, you know, lower gears, I don't think it had enough power to actually pull up hills. So, you know, it'll be interesting. And then there's that dog again. I better slow down for the corner. By the way, I don't know if it comes across in the videos, but I actually lean off the bike a fair bit around corners, because why not, right? Anyway, yeah, the stepping up, I can't do that on this. I'm like, you know, I can't, once I've chosen one of the settings here, I've chosen it, you know. I've got to stop and change out of eco or power, which doesn't really bother me, because I just leave it in like the power mode. And by the way, no, I don't use unrestricted mode, because that just hammers the battery down. I've got a couple of lads coming along. My God, it's got a fucking full face helmet on a regular scooter. Shit. Oh well, I suppose it makes sense for kids. Bones, you know, haven't broken, and they're, you know, not necessarily so good at what they're doing. But here's a good example. This road here, I'll be testing this one out when I get the 60, because, you know, it's a dirt road, so it's okay at this part of it, but when you get up further, there's some corrugations, like here, which aren't doing too bad today, actually. So it'll be interesting to take the MX60 along here and see how it varies. Oh shit, there's water in the dam. There you go. Probably if I rode along these sorts of roads any sort of distance, the combination of the pneumatic tyre and the adjustable air suspension on the MX60 will be a real bonus. And actually, I like the idea of being able to switch to rear-wheel drive only for corners, because you can dynamically change whether it's both wheels or only the back wheel driving you with the MX60, whereas here you can't change it at all. Oh, I thought that was 7 seconds. And then I can just come around here. So yeah, now you know what's been on my mind. I'm also a bit concerned about the amount of power that is needed to go into the MX60. Like, you know, it's got a 20 amp hour battery. The charge time is listed as being 13 hours with the standard charger, which is a 2 amp charger. Fuck me dead. No wonder. To be honest with you, I don't know how I feel about that. That means I'm going to have to get another bigger charger and they start to really step up in price once you get bigger than 4 amps, and this is, yeah, it probably is. I think I might fuck off somewhere else because I haven't finished yakking yet. Let's go up the top of the other hill. So really to charge at even C is 20 amps. I mean, think about that. That's a pretty hefty power supply. 20 amps at 60 volts. I mean, holy Jesus. So this 4 amps, that's still light automotive wiring, but the 20 amps is a bit more serious. So the cost of charging goes up either in money or time or both. And I don't know how I feel about that, because it's really convenient now with my 4 amp charger. I can come back with a low battery. This is going to be what I'd call a low battery, which is pretty fine because it's Sunday today and I'll be storing it for during the week, and then I'll charge it when I come back on Thursday. But I can plug this thing in and charge it for not much time, like 2 hours max, and I've got it there, because like 4 amps. Well, what is that? It's like 200 and, let's call it 200 watts, because it's 50 volts by 4. So the whole battery, if it was completely depleted, is 600 watt hours on this one. So with my 4 amp charger, I never really come in with it depleted more. So even if I need to shove 400 watt hours into it, which I don't normally do, I normally shove about 300 watt hours into it, which means I've taken it to a little bit less than half. That's only 2 hours, and then I'm back out on the road again. And it takes a serious amount of trips to get this down to that level. Like yesterday, I went over to Tanny Morel, which is just over that way on the other side of the hill over there, and that trip was 20 k's, total trip there and back. And I just sat on the same sort of speeds as I'm doing here, and there's a hill on the way up, and then it's down on the other side of the hill. So then I've got to traverse the hill on the other way as well. So and that was still only like 300 watt hours. So less than 2 hours if I don't mind not doing the full saturation charge, which I often do. Sure, I don't always just give it a top-up charge, but I would say at least half the time I only give it a quick charge. Well, that means full, in terms of the amount of amps going into the battery has dropped to 0.2 amps. And sorry, I was just looking at the countryside. And so I can basically say, okay, that I don't need to worry about the saturation charge. That's going to only add a little tiny bit. And in fact, it's better cycling the batteries that way a little bit, just as long as you make sure you balance charge every probably second or third recharge, because you want to make sure each one's up to saturation, and you want to give the little BMS in there an opportunity to make sure that all of the cell bundles are actually balanced, so that you don't find yourself with an out of balance pack, and then you'll find that it runs low faster and you don't have the grunt that you used to have. It's exactly what happened in my 500 watt one as well. And the new BMS, then, it's an active BMS now, so that's actually faster. I don't know what BMS will be in the MX20. I would be surprised if it's actually a 3-wire active one, but it might be. I don't know. Find out. 48 volts, so sitting on nominal. Okay. And a punch down. Well, I think it might be time to go home and have a scotch. Think about this a bit more. Anyway, I guess I've got a few people who watch my channel regularly. It's funny, I post it regularly, which I don't. Maybe you'll find this musing interesting. Maybe you'll think, kind of a crazy man is this. Maybe you just absolutely want to have the MX60 and there's no way you'd want to have this. Or maybe you think, well, the MX60's just too much money for what it is, and you know, I'm on that fence. This headwind's really slowing me down. Normally I crank down here a lot faster than this. And the headwind's not just coming from me, the headwind's coming from the rain that's blowing over there on the ridge. But that road up there, I'll take the MX60 up there and see if it'll go. This one won't go all the way out of that. It's too steep and rough. So it'll be interesting. Anyway, about this scoot, I must say, you know, it's been nothing but fantastic. Sure, I've had to tighten a few bolts here and there. Mostly that's just because I like to open up and look at things before it becomes a problem, you know. There's an old saying, a stitch in time saves 9, and sometimes it's actually it's a lot more stitches. So like today, while I was doing the axle inspection, I think I'm gonna make a small modification to where the axle mount is. I'll do a blog post about that. If you haven't found my blog yet and you follow this channel at all, I'll put a link to my blog in there, and maybe that'll help you, because there's often a lot more detail. I don't know. I think it's a lot easier to do detail on my blog than it is just talking crap, you know. Sure, sometimes the video really supplements stuff, but sometimes, you know, they say a picture paints 1,000 words. Well, sometimes, you know, I see some bad videos and they don't really paint much. Like, look at this video. Like, oh, here we go, magpies. Later on in the season, they'll be diving me. Okay, so just step up around the corner. Oh, back up the street again. See, I like the amount of power on this, you know, like the torque that it has is enough that I'm just getting up this hill here, and I know when I come up on my bicycle there's no way I can pedal up on this, and yet I don't do too badly for an old bastard, but certainly, you know, not as well as the 30-year-olds who are a lot fitter than me. Well, here we are, back home again, back on my street. So let's, there's my magpie. Let's head down the driveway. Okie dokie. Oh, look at that. Now we're down to one red dot. That's interesting. I haven't seen it saying one red dot, which actually makes sense because I think we're a little bit below half. So that's conservative. And I have actually had this with one white LED, was what I meant to see. I have actually ridden it with just a red dot, but it was pretty bad then. Okay, well, thanks for listening.